Relax the rules at my house. My ex-wife demanded I be stricter or face a custody battle, leaving me questioning my parenting. I, 43 male, have a daughter, 16F, who I have joint custody over with my ex-wife, 39F. We got divorced when my daughter was a baby and the court awarded 50-50 custody for the both of us. I will admit though, being a doctor comes with its consequences. I haven't been as present as I wish I could have been. When my daughter was 13, she started telling me things that her mom does or rules that she has in place over her, and how she thinks it's unfair. I'd listen to her and advise her to talk to her mom. My daughter would then ask if she has to obey those rules over here still, to which I said no. At first, it was just small stuff that I find nitpicky, things like not being able to eat in the living room. As she's gotten older, she started making more requests for privileges in my house, and it's pretty much gone like this. Example 1. Mom doesn't let me hang out with friends during the week. Well, that's dumb. If you have a ride there and back, you can go with your friends. Example 2. Mom doesn't let me wear comfortable cloths around the house. She says I have to dress modestly. You can walk around the house naked for all I care. Example 3. You and Mom's houses don't have locks on my bedroom door. There isn't a lock? I can call a guy out and have him put a lock in for you if you want. Example 4. Mom doesn't let me drink soda. Do you want soda? If so, I can order it with our groceries from Hy-Vee. You get the idea. I don't want to say I've become a doormat for my daughter, but I'm not nearly as stingy about rules. It's her house just as much as it's mine in my eyes. My ex-wife recently has been going off on my daughter and I about how I'm letting her get away with any and everything and how my lack of discipline at my house is leading her to break rules at her mother's house. I told my ex-wife that she should ease up on our daughter because she's almost a damn adult and doesn't need to be treated like a toddler. My ex-wife went bananas over the phone with me, and at her house, she went off on my daughter for being an undisciplined brat. My ex-wife is threatening to take me to court for custody if I don't straighten up my act, and I told her she kissed my ass. It has me wondering though, am I being an asshole to my ex-wife? Update 1. I have been talking to my daughter and ex-wife over the last several hours, and have figured out a few things. 1. There is no other permanent resident at my ex's house. No boyfriend, no husband, no other kids, nothing like that. My ex does have this book club thing she hosts and has guests once a month, but all are adults. 2. My ex-wife doesn't let my daughter have a lock on her door because, and I quote, because I'm not going to give her the ability to hide her drugs or boyfriends she is sleeping with. 3. My ex doesn't let my daughter see her friends during the week because she says her friends are distractions to school. However, her report card says she is doing just fine academically. 4. My ex doesn't just control what she wears, but also won't let her use makeup or even watch/consume adult media. My daughter says that my ex called her a tire slutty one time because she was wearing a shirt with no bra. My ex denies saying this, but I wouldn't put it past her. 5. I asked my daughter if she would be okay with my searching her room, and my daughter said she had nothing to hide. I looked around, and guess what? No drugs, no vapes, no illegal plans to take over the U.S. government, nothing like that. Normal 16-year-old girl room. 6. I asked my daughter if she would have a problem with me putting Life 360 on her phone so I can see where she goes. She handed me her phone and said, again, she has nothing to hide so she doesn't care. 7. I did talk to my daughter about her attitude and treatment to her mother. She agreed that she has been acting out, and said she will text or call me if she has an issue with something her mom is doing. She said she will respect her mother's rules, but she did ask me to talk to her about her mother's comments about her body. Apparently my daughter feels like her mother is sexualizing her and her body, and it makes her uncomfortable. I agreed to talk to her mom about it. So far the conversation is deadlocked because her mom will not let up on her whole modesty shit. 8. My daughter told my ex that she tried to take me to court. My daughter will ask a judge to live with me full time. More to come update wise. Thank you all for your input. Update 2. Over the past 7 days I've been going through a lot of stress between work, my daughter's reaction, and my ex-wife. To start, last Sunday, I had very long discussions with my ex-wife about our daughter. To not ramble on, daughter says it's called yapping now? I'll give you the short version. My ex-wife says that she has to be strict on my daughter so she doesn't turn out bad. She doesn't let my daughter wear makeup, hang out with her friends during the week, eat certain foods and drink certain drinks, consume certain media, have locks on her door, wear certain clothes, and she makes my daughter text her every hour she's not at school but out of the house on weekends, detailing who she is with, where she is at, and what they are doing. I talked to my daughter about her mother and my daughter says her life over there is stressful, feeling like she's always being watched. She feels like she has no freedoms or autonomy, that is at the mercy of her mother. My daughter did admit that she has been acting out recently at her mother's house, but I can't really blame her. I talked to one of my female co-workers who has 3 daughters about the situation I'm in. She said she is worried about my ex-wife mentally abusing my daughter, and I agreed. Some of you online also pointed out that my ex-wife could be sexualizing and objectifying my daughter, to which I've also come to agree to. I knew my daughter and my ex-wife have issues and have been butting heads on and off now for a while, but I didn't know it was this bad. Regardless, I talked to my daughter about her mother's rules at her house. If her mother doesn't want her eating in the living room or drinking Sprite, she's allowed to have that rule. I told her she cannot like it all she wants, but at the end of the day, they are not unreasonable requests. My daughter though very firmly asked me to talk to my ex-wife about the things that bug her the most. Those things are what she does and doesn't wear in the house, a lock on her door, and the rules in place about her friends, only on the weekends and texting her mom constantly. I asked my daughter if she would be okay with me tracking her on Life 360, and she said she's okay with me tracking her, but not her mother. My daughter tells me pretty much everything, though sometimes I wish she didn't overshare information I don't need to know about, and she says she trusts me and knows I trust her. But she doesn't want her mom to be able to track her at all hours of the day. The lock on her door was something else we discussed. I asked my daughter why she wanted a lock on her door, and she provided information I absolutely did not need to know, but basically, she wants privacy and to be alone sometimes. I checked her room out, with her in the room, and didn't find anything like drugs or plans to overthrow the Illuminati, so she's good on that front. When I asked her mother why she can't have a lock, she said it's because she, and I quote, doesn't want her having sex, doing drugs, or hiding things from her. Apparently, my ex-wife just barges into her room and searches her things. I found that to be ridiculous and a complete violation of my daughter's privacy, and I bitched a fit to my ex about it. No wonder my ex doesn't know any of my daughter and I's little secret, that she's bisexual. She can't even trust her mother not to go through her shit. Next, the whole issue about what she does and doesn't wear in the house. In my house, I couldn't give less of a fuck. Usually she walks around in a shirt with no bra wearing boxers or some shit. Sometimes she wears normal clothes, sometimes she goes nude, sometimes she wears one of those full body pajama suits. Don't give a shit, but she knows the rules about it. She has to leave the house wearing normal clothes and she needs to have normal clothes on when guests are at the house. When she's there alone or with me, she can do whatever. Her mom on the other hand has been sexualizing her daughter and making incredibly suggestive comments about her body. My ex denies doing this, but I don't think my daughter would lie about it, and knowing my ex-wife, she 100% said it. My ex said my daughter dresses very provocatively, behaves like a performer, and is not a modest woman. Needless to say, this upset me deeply, and we exchanged some heated words over the topic. My daughter came over to the house today for our 50-50 custody swap, and immediately went and locked herself in her room. At first, I thought maybe she was going to FaceTime her friends or something, so I let it be for a bit, but after she didn't come out after an hour or so, I knocked on her door. My daughter had been crying. I asked why, and she said that my ex told her she's gonna take me to court and ensure I won't see her again. Just got done consoling my heartbroken daughter, typing all of this out with her tears and snot on my nice shirt. Update 3. Monday night I got a knock at my door at 12:40 a.m. I'm in pajama pants and a t-shirt, dog is losing his mind, and there's 2 officers on my porch doing a welfare check because my ex couldn't get a hold of our daughter and was worried for her safety. My daughter was literally on the couch next to me watching some baking show and eating cereal. She introduced herself, told them she was fine, they looked around, saw that the world hadn't ended, and left. I told her to go to bed, then stared at the ceiling for 2 hours wondering if that was going to set the tone for the week. Tuesday morning I met with a family law attorney before work, walked in with a file full of texts, screenshots, and our decree, walked out with a plan and the punch in the gut that this is probably going to court whether I like it or not. He told me to get daughter into therapy, stop communicating with my ex by phone, and move everything to a co-parenting app so there's a record. He said at 16, judges listen. He also said, very clearly, do not let her walk around nude in common areas with you in the house. Okay. Noted. We sat down that night and I told my daughter new rule for here, shirt and shorts or pajamas minimum in the open. She rolled her eyes, said obviously, and didn't fight me on it. I texted the same to my ex through the app. No response there, besides we'll be discussing a lot more than that in front of a judge. Wednesday after school, my daughter asked if we could stop by the hardware store. She picked out a dumb privacy knob, we came home, and she installed the lock on her door herself. She was weirdly proud of it. She also asked if she could see a therapist. I made 2 calls and got her an appointment Thursday afternoon with someone one of my colleagues recommended who works with teens. I sat in the waiting room reading a 6-month-old magazine about gardens I'll never grow while my kid cried to a stranger about feeling watched in her own home. When she came out, her face was puffy but she hugged me like she did when she was little. Therapist asked if I'd be willing to do parent sessions and if mom would agree. I said yes. Jury's still out on mom. Thursday evening blew up. My ex showed up unannounced at my house at 8 o'clock with a printout of an emergency motion she'd filed that morning asking for temporary full custody and accusing me of fostering immodest behavior, neglecting boundaries, and undermining discipline. I told her to get off my porch. She refused. I called non-emergency. 2 officers came, looked at the calendar, and told her it's my time and she needs to leave. She started yelling that I was turning our daughter into a fast woman, and I kid you not, my daughter stepped outside and, in the calmest voice I have ever heard from her, said, "Mom, go home. I'm safe." My ex drove off screaming that we'd see what the judge says. Friday morning we had the hearing. My attorney, my ex and her attorney, me in a suit that barely saw daylight during residency, and my kid sitting there chewing her lip. Judge was no nonsense. We each talked. My ex did her whole "he lets her do anything, he's permissive, she'll end up pregnant on a park bench routine. She also tried to bring up the clothing thing like I've got her in a nudist colony. My attorney laid out the rules I've put in place, the Life 360 I added, the therapist, the fact that school says she's doing fine, the police report from the midnight welfare check that was not an emergency. The judge asked if daughter would like to speak privately. She nodded, and they went back. I stared at the floor and tried not to throw up. When they came out, the judge made a temporary order. No removing bedroom doors. No reading her messages or journals without cause. Both parents to use the co-parenting app only. No more screaming phone calls or surprise driveway ambushes. No disparaging or sexualized comments about daughter's body by either parent. Reasonable tracking allowed by either parent, but no hourly check-ins unless she's late or plans change. Family therapy to start within 2 weeks. And the big one, daughter's preference will be given significant weight if this proceeds to a full custody modification. And in the meantime the existing 50-50 stands with clarification that each house can have different, reasonable rules. My ex tried to argue modesty is non-negotiable and the judge literally told her to sit down. We walked out to the hallway, my ex hissed traitor at our daughter, and my daughter, who I swear grew up 5 years and 5 days, said, "Stop calling me names. I'm your kid." We got in the car and she burst into tears again, then laughed at herself for crying, then asked if we could go get tacos. We got tacos. This weekend I met with the therapist for my parent session. We talked about boundaries, how to keep them consistent here without feeding the chaos over there, and how to help a 16-year-old feel like she has a say without pretending she's 30. We put together a simple set of house rules that I printed and stuck on the fridge. School first, tell me where you are and who you're with, curfew on school nights, no eating on the new couch because I like it and you spill everything you touch. She rolled her eyes at that one and then immediately spilled salsa on the kitchen floor. Universe has a sense of humor. Today the school called me because my ex tried to pick our daughter up midday for a doctor's appointment that didn't exist. The office checked the custody order, called me, and the school resource officer kept my daughter in the office until it was sorted. The SRO made a note. We're now on the school's release to list with specific times, and the secretary told me, Mom was not happy. No kidding. I don't know where this lands long term. My daughter told me she wants to testify if it comes to that, and that she's tired of being called names by the person who's supposed to protect her. I'm tired too. I miss when my biggest fight with her was over who ate the last Pop-Tart. For now, my kid has a lock on her door, a therapist she liked enough to go back to, a judge who told her she gets a say, and a dad who finally stopped hoping this would fix itself and got his shit together. That's where we're at. Update 4. I thought maybe we were heading into a lull. We were not. Saturday morning I was making pancakes and trying to teach the dog down. He knows down means jump higher, when there was a knock I recognized now as official. Not uniforms this time. CPS. A woman with a badge and a tote bag asked if she could come in and talk because there'd been a report of neglect and inappropriate exposure in my home. My kid was at the counter stabbing strawberries into a smiley face on her pancake and said, without looking up, "Cool, I'll show you my bedroom and my lock." The worker was polite. She asked if there were concerns about substances. I almost joked about the 2 liters of Sprite in the fridge but decided probably not the time. Daughter did the interview in her room with the door closed while I sat on the couch trying not to memorize every scuff on the coffee table. When they came out, my kid had that tight-jawed look she gets when she's trying hard not to cry or laugh. CPS lady asked about therapy, school, rules. I pointed at the fridge, told her about the Life 360, told her a judge had told us to knock it off with the body commentary and the snooping. She thanked me, petted the dog, and said she'd be following up with Mom as well. Which answered the question of who'd called. Monday was our first joint therapy. Same office, different room with chairs that looked like they belonged to a nice dentist. The therapist laid ground rules in slow, calm sentences, like she was talking to both a teenager and a feral cat. My ex walked in with a spiral notebook and an expression like she was ready to take minutes at a meeting where she's already decided the outcome. We got 5 minutes of normal, then it went sideways. My daughter said, "I want you to stop commenting on my body," and my ex said, "I have too, you don't understand male temptation," and the therapist put her hand up like a traffic cop and said, "We do not sexualize minors here." My ex doubled down with something about virtue and falling in with bad influences, and my kid said, very quietly, "Mom, I like girls too. It's not just boys." You could feel the air change. My ex's mouth opened and closed. She said, "You're confused," and the therapist said, "No labeling, please," and my daughter's hands were shaking and she kept talking anyway. "I'm not confused. I'm scared of you reading my phone to see who I'm texting." The therapist looked at me. I said, "The court order says no reading without cause," and my ex shot me a look that would peel paint. The therapist assigned us homework about boundaries and breathing exercises. My ex wouldn't take it. She left first, notebook pressed to her chest. My kid stared at the ceiling until she laughed, then cried, then asked if we could go get pretzels. We got pretzels. Wednesday is when it went from bad to insane. It was my ex's day. At 6:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Do not call," was the first text. Then, "They're here." Life 360 showed my kids at her mom's house like it's supposed to. Then she sent a picture. Her bedroom door leaned in the hallway like a body at a wake. No hinges. No knob. Mom says I lost door privileges, she texted. Because I wouldn't unlock my phone for her friend. I called. No answer. I messaged on the co-parenting app that there's a court order about doors. It's being painted, she wrote back, which would have been more convincing if the door in the picture wasn't the same color and covered in fingerprints, not paint. My kid sent a second picture, two women I vaguely recognized from the book club, standing in her room, one of them holding my daughter's journal like it was radioactive. I took a screenshot so hard I thought I was going to break the screen. I showed up with the order in a folder like I was serving papers. I didn't go inside. I called non-emergency from the curb and asked for a civil standby. 2 officers rolled up. We all had a conversation in the driveway that I'm pretty sure the neighbors will be discussing at their next HOA committee meeting. I pointed to the part of the order that says no removing doors, no reading journals. The officer read it and asked my ex if there was a safety reason for the door being off. She said defiance. The officer looked at the other officer the way partners do when they've had this exact conversation too many times. He told my ex to put the door back on. She said my house, and he said court order. My daughter was behind her, cheeks blotchy, holding her journal. She didn't look at me, she looked at the officer and said, "Do I have to stay?" He said, "Do you feel unsafe?" She nodded. He told my ex he was going to document that she'd been violating a court order and that the child was leaving with me for the night. My ex screamed that this was kidnapping. The officer deadpanned, "Ma'am, please step back." My daughter walked past her with a backpack and the book club ladies stared at their shoes. The door was still in the hall when we left. Thursday morning my attorney filed an emergency motion with about 9 exhibits, including the picture of the door and the journal. Friday we were back under the fluorescent lights. Same judge. Same suit. The judge did not look amused. She read the police incident report, looked at my ex, and said, "Did you or did you not remove this child's bedroom door?" My ex said something about consequences. The judge said, "For the record, a door is not optional. Privacy is not optional. You do not deputize friends to rifle your child's belongings." Then she did the thing I wasn't expecting and granted me temporary primary physical custody pending a full hearing, with my ex to have parenting time on set days, unsupervised but only if she returns the door immediately and stops the surveillance behavior, and with all the therapeutic stuff to continue. "If there's one more violation," she said, looking straight at my ex, "we will revisit supervised visits." My ex tried to argue again about modesty. The judge told her that word was becoming meaningless in her mouth. We got out in the hall and my daughter sat on the floor against the wall and texted her best friend one word, "Free." She said it out loud after she hit send and looked at me like she was surprised it had come from her. On the way home, she asked if we could stop by a hardware store. She bought a tiny botched-looking doorstop with a cat on it and jammed it under her bedroom door when we got home. "Insurance," she said. The dog sniffed it and went to sleep against the door like he'd been hired. Today my phone buzzed in the middle of rounds. It was the school counselor asking if we could do a quick call. Apparently my ex had emailed all of my kids' teachers asking for seat changes away from boys, and no group work, and to monitor wardrobe in class. The counselor said that's not a thing anyone does, and that she'd made a note. I told her about the court order and that any communication needs to come through both of us and the app, and she said, "We'll stick to that." I picked my daughter up and she was wearing a sweatshirt with a cartoon cat flipping the bird. She asked if she could invite a friend over, girl from orchestra, short, funny, wore combat boots, and I said yes if her parents were okay with it. They watched a bad baking competition and attempted to make macaron and produced little sugar hockey pucks that tasted like a science class went wrong. They were both laughing. I stood in the doorway too long like a creep and my kid rolled her eyes and told me to stop hovering. The house was loud and normal and the stupid door with the stupid cat wedge on it looked like $1 million upgrade. My ex's messages in the app have been coming like clockwork. Paragraphs about sin and you're corrupting her mixed with schedule logistics. I'm not responding to the former. I'm sticking to the latter. There's a guardian ad litem now. He'll be at both houses this week. I cleaned like a maniac, then sat on my couch with the dog and realized there wasn't anything to hide in the first place, unless you count the sticky spot where someone knocked over maple syrup during the CPS visit. The Life 360 shows a little circle with her face at home, and I've never been so grateful to see a pixelated teenager stuck to my couch, telling me I'm not funny and asking me if we can get tacos again tomorrow. Update 5. The guardian ad litem came by on Tuesday and sat on my rug like a camp counselor who's seen every kind of family circus you can imagine. The dog melted into him like he'd been waiting his whole life for a man with a legal pad. He asked normal questions and weird questions and the kind of questions that make you realize your kid is listening to how you answer. He looked at the fridge where I've got the rules printed like a passive-aggressive diner menu, asked about therapy, and told my daughter he wanted to talk to her alone for a bit. She showed him her room, her door, the ridiculous cat wedge jammed under it. He smiled at the wedge like it was the funniest thing he'd seen all week, which it probably was. When he left, he said something polite and noncommittal about appreciating the structure here, which I think is guardian ad litem for this isn't a disaster. He went to my ex's the next day. I know because my daughter texted me a picture of a plate of store-bought cookies on a doily like we don't all recognize a grocery bakery brownie when we see one. There was also a binder on the coffee table labeled Household Standards in gold vinyl letters. I stared at the picture long enough to memorize the font. My daughter said the gal asked to see her room and that my ex tried to go with them, and he told her he needed to talk to child alone. My daughter said my ex stood outside the door with her ear to it like a cartoon robber. After, my ex messaged me through the app that I was coaching our daughter to manipulate officials. I wrote back that any communication about scheduling should be in the schedule section. She wrote 3 paragraphs about moral decay in the medical information section. I replied noted. I've never written a word that made me feel more like a cat hissing. The part where my life started feeling like a bad spy movie was Saturday. I was on call and my daughter was at home doing homework at the counter, and my phone lit up with a text that just said, Then, my phone says an AirTag is moving with me. Then the little pop-up screenshot. We're not Apple people in this house by philosophy, we're Apple people by inertia, so she knows what that means. We tore apart her backpack like raccoons, then her violin case because she had practiced earlier and carries the thing like a third limb. 5 minutes of nothing. Then she hit the play sound button and I swear we both held our breath like we were in a submarine. It chirped from the seam under the lining, stitched in like someone had tucked a quarter into it for luck. It was small and white and felt like holding a bad idea. I filmed myself pulling it out and I filmed the serial number screen because at this point everything gets filmed. I told her to grab shoes. We took it to the station and did a report. The officer was calm in the way of a man who has already had his coffee and seen worse. He told us they'd request owner information from Apple and to keep the notification screenshots. On the way home my daughter said the quietest, "You think it's her?" I didn't answer. The app lit up with my ex writing kids are impulsive and need supervision like that sentence had anything to do with what was in my cup holder in an evidence bag. I notified her through the app that we'd found a tracking device in our child's belongings and had notified law enforcement. She replied, "Prove it." Okay. Monday night was the orchestra concert. If you've never been in a gym that smells like dust and floor polish while 30 kids tune instruments at the same time, you haven't experienced modern dissonance. She wore the school-issued black ensemble like everyone else and combat boots because she's still her. I sat on one side of the bleachers with the dog fur still on my coat and my ex sat on the other with a shawl over her shoulders like she was attending a Victorian funeral. They played Pachelbel so earnestly my eyes stung. After, there was the milling around that happens when kids wrap up chords and put music stands away. I was waiting by the exit when I saw my ex beeline for the backstage hall with her shawl clutched like a mission. By the time I got there, the school resource officer had already stepped between them. My ex was telling my kid she looked too mature and trying to put the shawl over her shoulders like she was smothering a fire. My kid had her violin in one hand and her dignity in the other and was saying, "Mom, it's the uniform." The SRO said, very politely, "Ma'am, please don't grab students. I have never liked fluorescent lighting. I liked it less then." The principal sent me an email the next morning that an incident report had been filed and appropriate boundaries were reviewed with my ex. My daughter rolled her eyes at appropriate boundaries and ate a Pop-Tart. Wednesday I got a certified letter at the hospital from the state medical board. When the receptionist handed me the envelope my stomach did the thing stomachs do when gravity forgets them. A complaint has been made about inappropriate boundaries with a minor in your care and exposure in the home. It read like someone had swallowed my ex's app messages and spit them at a bureaucrat. I walked the letter straight to the head of compliance and told her the whole thing, beginning to end. She took notes and told me to breathe and said the board has to investigate even when the complaints are nonsense, and that my written response should be boring and factual with documentation. I've never wanted to be boring so badly. I sent my attorney a photo of the letter and he called me in 5 minutes and told me, "This is retaliation. We'll handle it." I went into an exam room after and cleaned my glasses for a full minute because the alternative was putting my head through the cabinet. Thursday the AirTag detective called. He said they had the owner information. It wasn't registered to my ex. It was registered to one of the book club ladies. He asked if that person had permission to track my child. I said no. Out loud, in the measured tone of a person sitting on their hands. He said they'd be following up and that he was adding it to our case file. I messaged the update on the app. My ex responded with concerned friends only want to help and something about community accountability. I put my phone on the counter and walked the dog around the block until my ears stopped ringing. We were back in front of the judge Friday morning for a short hearing my attorney requested about additional surveillance. It's insane how normal the courthouse starts to feel when you've been there enough. Same judge. Same suit that now fits like I might actually belong to a profession. The detective's report was in the packet. The judge's mouth did a flat line when she read the name. "Third parties may not monitor this child," she said, like she was reading a weather alert. "No covert tracking. No devices placed on her person or property." She said a review on the board complained in the context of our case because apparently judges can do 14 things at once and remember them all. She also told my ex, "If this continues, we will be discussing supervised visitation and therapeutic intervention for you as well." My ex started to say but modesty, and the judge's hand went up like the therapist's had. I'm learning that good women with clipboards can stop a train. The gal sent a preliminary note on Monday. Not a final recommendation, but the words stability and respecting adolescent autonomy and primary with father during pendency were in there. My daughter read the email over my shoulder and made a noise that was halfway between a laugh and a sob, and then asked if we could go to the DMV because her friend had gotten her permit and she wanted to beat her by a day. We sat on plastic chairs and she took the test, and the woman behind the counter told her she'd missed too, and my daughter beamed like she'd been handed a diploma. I let her drive in an empty parking lot, one hand at 10, one at 2, brow furrowed like she was doing surgery. She almost ran over a rogue shopping cart and then laughed so hard she had to pull over. I haven't heard that kind of laugh from her in months. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, life was still happening. The girl from orchestra came over again. They did homework, which from my kitchen sounded like two kids watching videos and accusing each other of being wrong about parabolas. At one point I looked in and they were on their stomachs with their feet kicked up in the air like a teen movie, and I had a mental flash of every dad panic privilege I've ever had access to. I knocked on the doorframe and said, "Hey. Door stays open when you have someone in here. House rule." My kid said, "Yep," without the exhausted edge I was bracing for. Her friend waved at me with a pencil and asked if we had more paper because the macaron had eaten theirs last week. We made nachos. The dog got one and pretended to choke to get attention. My ex has kept to the schedule since the hearing because I think she's starting to realize the judge isn't theater, but her messages still read like a sermon stapled to a recipe. She CC'd the school on an email about propriety in gym class, and the counselor replied all with the syllabus and the district dress code like a brick in jello. The therapist met with me again and asked how I was sleeping, and I said like a hummingbird with a Fitbit. She didn't laugh, but her eyes did. She keeps telling me that routine is a kind of love. I put Garbage Tuesday in the calendar like it's a holiday. Tonight my kid asked if she could drive us to get tacos. She adjusted the seat, mirror, mirror, mirror again, breathed like the therapist taught her, and took us down our street like it was a runway. We ate in the parking lot because eating in the car feels like getting away with something even when it's your own driveway you're going back to. She told me the gal asked her what feeling safe feels like and she didn't know how to answer, and then today she thought maybe it feels like not checking the door every time it clicks. When we got home, she reached down and straightened the dumb cat doorstop with her foot, then rolled her eyes at herself and left it alone. The Life 360 showed her little face at home. The dog snored like a cartoon. I answered one message in the app about pickup next week and ignored 3 that weren't about pickup. The complaint letter is still on my desk under a paperweight. The taco place put limes in the bag even though we didn't ask, and my daughter stole them and ate them like oranges. She made a face and laughed at herself for making a face. I know we're not done. But for the first time in a while, it didn't feel like we're losing. It felt like a Tuesday. And I'll take it.